Hi, I'm Jim and this is Jim's Fix-It Shop. And right now we're going to work on this mower deck that you might have caught a glimpse of in the last video. It has a damaged area, turn this right here. The guy that sold it to me told me he drove off a curb and it deflected the mower deck enough the blade hit the deck and put a gouge in it. I've got a friend of mine, Mike, in Virginia, that buys a lot of these machines. You can get them all over down south for next to nothing. He basically buys them for a few parts in the engines. He's an engine mechanic. He's been fixing these things for, I think he said 20 some years. He buys them, fixes them up, shelves them, and then he sells them when someone needs an engine. He's got a couple of these decks he's going to scrap. He can't really afford to ship the whole deck up here. So what I'm going to have him do is, I got some tape on here marking it. I'm going to have him cut a piece out of a deck and send it to me. And I'm going to cut this to match and weld it in to get rid of this. But the next issue I have, he put a brand new blade on it, is when that hit, ruined the bearings, I believe. So we're going to try and pull this spindle out and see what them bearings look like. So the first thing you want to do is you can loosen the big nut in the center first. That gives you something to hang on to with this blade on here. And I use an impact to get them off. Just gotta hang on to the thing so it don't spin the blade on you. That's on a little bit tighter than I thought. Let me grab something else. Okay, that was a little bit smaller impact. This one is an Ingersoll Rand, and I got a loose fitting here. It's got a little more oomph to it, so let's give this a shot. And apparently that's what we needed. This one I bought used. Might have to tighten this fitting up a little. That one I bought over there, I bought brand new, and it just doesn't have the power as one of these Ingersolls do. Let's see if we can get the blade off now. Boy, that sure spins it off. Where that bolt went, I mean the other nut. There it is. Now to get these blades off, sometimes it's tricky because the blade is actually longer than what this hole is, because the deck is wrapped around and it has a lip on it. This deck is what they call a high vac deck. The ones that come straight up with no lip, just a standard deck. They don't work as well as these do. To get the blade off and on, I roll it and shove it out the hole where the grass clippings blow out of. We'll put that down there. They got a washer on here that they must have put on to try to center the blade. That's what these bolts do. You don't need that washer. Now this is loose. Let me see here. Maybe it was just the bar giving me the rattle and not the bearings. We'll find out pretty quick. This washer off of here. Well, Okay, if you don't have any fingernails, get yourself a couple magnets. Works like a charm. Now this is the washer that most of them have on. It has a boss sticking down. It's got a flange that sticks down below this surface up here. That's so it'll fit down in there and rub against the inner race of the bearing. Now, we got bearing issues. This little jewel can help. It's a piece of rod with a hole tapped that fits on the shaft. If the threads weren't messed up a little, maybe it's not going to go on there. There we go. We're going to screw that down on there. And we're going to throw an indicator on it. Bearings should not have more than 1/1000th play. Let's see what it tells us. I got 10/1000ths. That's telling me this bearing is definitely shot. Now, if you wanted to check this for being bent, you could do that too. If you're having trouble with your blade wobbling and you're not sure, you can put that on there. And turn this big pulley down here. I'm showing about 15/1000ths. So when I get this shaft out, I'll check it at work and make sure that it's not the shaft, that it's not the bearings throwing the shaft off and letting it wiggle. So the next thing we got to do is get these 3 bolts out of here. Okay, we got one left to get out. You got to go under the deck with a 9/16 wrench and get on that head of that bolt. And spin them off. Okay, we got these out. Find something to throw all this hardware in. Okay, we got a little cheese box here. Not a cheesy box. This is a cheese box. Oh, sorry, I just couldn't help that. Throw all them in there before I start losing things. Now we got the bottom done. Now the fun part. We got to flip it over and take the top apart. Then you got to flip it over again and pull the spindle out. So I'll do this off camera because it's usually quite awkward. Now, in case you were wondering, I had the deck upside down, but because of all this stuff sticking up, I still had it sitting level. I made these little T's. They're just 2x6s. And of course that might vary from one machine to the next. These are 9.5 inches tall. And I just set them in different spots on the deck when I flip it over, and it keeps it level. That way, if that mounting bar is really frozen on there, I can dump down some good penetrating oil and it will get down in there because the deck is level. So now we got to take this apart. Okay, if I'm going to be rattling this thing this much, I'm going to go get my regular impacts because I don't want to break a socket. you're going to need 1 1/8 to take that big nut off the top of that pulley. I just hang on to the pulley. If you think that's going to be a problem, you can clamp something on. Whoops! You can clamp something on it, or grab onto it with a pair of pliers. I tipped over my cheesy box here, full of parts. Okay, plug your ears. Okay, now the whole thing wants to turn now. So I'm going to have to get underneath of it and hold it from spinning. Boy, that was a challenge. I had to put the bar back on the bottom, put the nut back on and torque it, and then hold the bar and get the nut off with the impact on the other side. I've never had that kind of trouble getting one apart, but it's off. Now we have to get the brake off the top of the spindle. Let me tip this down. It's got a big spring over here, and I think if we apply this as if we're going to turn the deck on, it loosens the spring up, so you can just pull these pins and take them out. Okay, we got the 2 cotter keys out and the washers that were under them. Now if we turn the deck on, it loosens the brake band and you should be able to slide it right off of here. 2 hands would help, I guess. And then you can pull this pin out. Now I'm going to put these washers and cotter keys back on here so I don't lose them. Little parts always seem to get lost. Then we take the brake hub off and this snap ring. Figure out what pliers I want to use. I think this is the set that I need. I can get them out of here. These are nice because they have a locking feature on them. That holds the snap ring open once you get it off. Come over here somewhere so I can get onto that thing and not get in your way too bad. You can hear the ratchet working. And sometimes these things can be stubborn. They've been in here for a long time, they're going to be stuck pretty good. Get that pried up out of the groove. So when the pliers slip, it won't go back in on me. And this one is really being stubborn. I could turn it a little, it would really help. Finally. Got that one off. Now that holds this bracket on the top of the spindle. There's another snap ring underneath this you have to get off to get the spindle out. And I don't know if I can get this out without unhooking both of these springs. Yep, I don't have to mess with that one. And here is the other snap ring down underneath the bracket for the idler pulley. That's what that does. I'm not sure I can get on this one, maybe. You just got to keep working at it. Try to get that little bugger out of there. Got it up a little bit. Finally. Now we can lift the deck up, the spindle will fall right out the bottom. There we go. The tolerance ring on here looks good. I don't know if you can hear that, but them are definitely shot. So, if I can get this deck out of the way, we'll tear that spindle apart. There, had to get out a different pair of pliers. And of course, they always have the wrong tip on them. So we are going to pop this, now that we're working from the top of the spindle. That bearing is held in with snap rings. The bottom bearing floats up and down. It aligns itself once you put the spindle in and tighten the nuts up. The top bearing is fixed between two snap rings. And when you tighten this up, the washer that you got to put on here, and when you screw your bar on, it's going to push the bearing where it belongs and it'll stay there. It can't go up any higher because the spindle has steps on it and it's pinched between them steps. Once I get it out, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here's some extra washers they got on there to hit on the inner race. And make sure you put these back where they belong. Some go on the top, some go on the bottom. Now I'm going to get a hammer. For this I want to use a nylon hammer. I don't want to mess up them threads. You can dig in here somewheres, and if you can get that nut on, which you probably won't because it's self-locking, you can screw it on until it's flush with the end of the shaft, so you're hitting both, and it shouldn't hurt the bearing or the threads. The bearings are shot. We're just going to tap that out of there. Now this is what I meant by, see, now they've been greasing this through that grease fitting, which does absolutely no good at all. These are sealed bearings. The grease cannot get into them. You're wasting your time and your grease. I've mentioned this before in other videos. That bearing doesn't feel too bad. this one's rough. So we're just going to put 2 new ones in there and be done with it. Now I'm going to take that other snap ring out of there. And you want to have a hold of it, because when you get it out, if it slips off your pliers, you're really going to have to look for it. This one does not want to come out of there. Now, before I put this back together, I totally cleaned the inside. Underneath your brake hub that goes on the top, there is a vent hole. So if you got these 2 bearings in there, which are sealed with a shield, and you pump grease in here, if you pump enough in to fill this entire cavity, it's just going to ooze out this hole, and there's no way you can build up enough pressure to actually force the grease in these bearings. And normally I just stick my hammer handle in there and knock that out, but it's pretty grubby in there with all that old grease, so I don't think I want to stick my hammer handle in there. Let me find an old wooden dowel. Okay, I think I'm even going to wrap a rag around this dowel. It's pretty greasy down in there, and just drive that thing out of there. And there's the bearing and the greasy rag. Boy, you just gotta love that, don't you? I don't know about you guys, but I think I'm gonna have to crack another cold one pretty darn quick. Now I'm gonna go clean this thing out in my parts washer in the other room, and I just happen to have a set of bearings on the shelf. We'll throw back in this thing, and hopefully it will be done. I can see why that nut did not want to come off of this shaft very good. Somebody really has it tore up. They got marks around here from I don't know what, something that was maybe a 3-jaw chuck on a lathe. But it's tore up in 2 different places. I'm going to have to see if I got a die I can run back on this end, or I might be making a new shaft at work this week. Let me go clean this up, and I'll be right back. Okay, we got it all cleaned up. You can see how shiny it is. It's the way you want it. No grease. But the shaft, I don't have a die big enough to chase these threads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to work Monday. I'm going to put it in a lathe. That way I can put an indicator on here and see if this shaft is bent. If it is, it's junk. I'll make a new shaft. Probably an hour and a half I can make a new one of these for nothing. So until next time, don't forget to subscribe, and the next video will be putting this thing back together with either a repaired shaft or a brand new one. So I guess that's it. Work safe, have fun, and we'll talk to you soon.